I'd just like to say a big thank you to Sonia Watson of BBC Essex for inviting me in the studio today to discuss the new documentary that is out on Channel 5 this evening. How I Murdered Mum and Dad, the Virginia McCullough Confessions. Please sit back, listen and enjoy.
Let's get to one of our main news stories this morning then, 10 minutes past 7. And in 2023, Essex police arrived at a house in Great Baddow. Concerns had been raised by a GP that John and Lois McCullough hadn't been seen for years. Well, their daughter Virginia answered the door and confessed immediately to killing them and living with their bodies. That moment was recorded by police officers.
Stay where you are! Stay where you are, show your hands.
The time is 12:12. You're under arrest on suspicion of murder.
I need to tell you something about what's upstairs on the top floor as well.
It's fine.
Yeah, okay.
My dad's body's in there.
Right, okay.
Yep, okay. Obviously I'll
Where about your mum?
A little bit more complicated.
Where will we find your mum?
Well, possible.
Where will we find your mum?
Okay, so upstairs there are about 5 wardrobes.
Yep.
It's behind the bed, but back next to the sink. I did know that this would kind of come eventually. It's proper that I serve my punishment. Cheer up, at least you caught the bad guy. I mean, I deserve to obviously get whatever's coming sentence-wise, because that's the right thing to do.
Well, Virginia is now serving a life sentence for the murder of both of her parents. And tonight, a documentary is going to be shown on Channel 5, which features letters from Virginia herself. They've been voiced up by an actor. Have a listen to the trailer.
I knew even as a child that I should not have been a part of that family. I thought about killing myself before I thought about killing my parents.
A woman from Essex has been charged with killing 2 people believed to be her parents.
Most unlikely person to be a murderess.
Killing your own parents is extremely rare, especially from a female.
I felt emotionally desperate and trapped.
Something was going on behind closed doors that we just didn't know about.
She was a bit of a fantasist with some of the things that she used to say to us.
You question whether anything was true about her life.
The road that led me to commit the crime is one which I think should be got first-hand.
It is important to allow Virginia to give her say, because I think the question of why she did what she did hasn't been answered. What I don't know is how truthful and honest she'll be.
Well, that's a trailer for that documentary. You'll be able to see that on TV tonight. Paul Maliri took part in that programme, and Paul is a former Essex police officer, murder squad detective and true crime commentator. And Paul is with us in the studio. Good morning to you, Paul.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me in this morning.
You're welcome. This is a little bit unique, isn't it, in the sense we don't always hear the killer's side or the killer's words, albeit voiced up by an actor in a programme like this. It's quite unusual, isn't it?
Well, it's very rare. And of course, once people are released from prison, they're not allowed to engage with the media. Right. That's part of their licence. So to have this footage and this content is absolutely brilliant. It's a captivating piece of work. And the producer, Charlie Wakefield, did a brilliant job to engage with the suspect. And it's a really, really good piece. The nice thing about it is it actually fills in all the gaps, because otherwise we see it with other crimes, the Essex Boys and so on and so forth. What happens is what people don't know they make up, and then all of a sudden they become instant Facebook experts. This actually dispels all the myths and puts it all into complete packages, if you like.
What does it get? I mean, people will perhaps want to watch it, or maybe they won't, but they will be interested to find out what's revealed in this documentary. But what are some of the things that come up in these letters then? Does it tell us anything?
What it actually shows is that there's a course of conduct, and the fact that she had planned meticulously the way that she was going to dispatch her parents. I mean, it's very, very hard hitting. It's not for the light-hearted, but it's a really, really captivating piece of documentary work.
And I suppose, I think the producer of this show you mentioned earlier actually went to school with Virginia, so there's a little bit of history there and perhaps a personal element. and perhaps a need to want to answer some of those questions or find out a bit more about the case when you are sort of connected to that person from albeit years ago. But that's an interesting link, isn't it, to the two of them?
Yeah, it is absolutely, yes. He went to school with her, and once he'd heard, he wrote to her in prison, and she basically unloaded everything that she'd been involved in. And it's really, really captivating. I've met many killers, and they are very interesting people. They're not nice people. Everyone's got a story. But her story, the way that she's unloaded, the footage from the police officers, you've caught the bad guys, smile. And it's almost a relief to her that she wanted to get caught. Now,
Do you often see that? As you said, you've dealt with a lot of cases like this in the time. It's quite an unusual thing to hear. As you say, you can almost hear relief, can't you? Then?
Yeah,
Do you often see that?
You can. I mean, I think there's a narcissistic value to it as well for her, because I think she is a complete narcissist. It's all about her, the fact that she, took her parents' money, etc., etc. But there was a relief there, because she was living in a life that was quite disgusting, if I'm honest with you. It's not pleasant. But no, very few murderers admit it as you walk through the front door. I mean, those police officers, I think they were a bit struck by what had gone on. I don't think they actually expected that. In fact, they should have expected to find things in there, but I don't know that they did. I really don't.
With her sort of telling people what to find and where to find it, as you say, you kind of don't necessarily expect that. I suppose it brings us on to the question of, this was a harrowing case, and true crime is a huge genre.
Yes.
And as you said, these killers are not nice people, clearly, because of what they've done, but there are questions and there is an interest in this. Is it right to hear the voice, albeit through an actor, of somebody who's done something so awful to her own parents? Morally, is that right?
Yes, I think so. And the reason I say that is because it's in the public domain anyway. If somebody goes to the Crown Court, they're able to experience this in first hand, because there would have been admissions there would have been a barrister reading these things out. So, yeah, absolutely. It's not about glorification. It really isn't. And I enjoyed doing the commentating on true crime and on murders. But it's making sure that the public are properly informed about what has actually taken place. It, as I say, it dispels all the myths and the rumours and, they could have done it. And, we only have to look at the cases like Jeremy Bamber. In 100 years' time, they'll still be talking about that in the same way that they're talking about the Jack the Ripper stuff, and they're trying to identify the person responsible for the Whitechapel murders. People have always had a morbid interest in this type of crime.
I suppose, and I'm just sort of thinking from sort of my side of things as well, it's wanting to understand why someone would do that, isn't it? In a lot of cases, what the actual motivation is, why somebody would do that. Some of those questions people want to know, don't they? Because it is sometimes so incredulous what some of those actions that people have taken.
Yeah, absolutely. And the motivation is the biggest part, because when somebody goes to such extreme lengths in order to carry out a crime of that type, I mean, look, I've worked on every type of, single punch, one punch and they're dead, and right the way through to the contract element. It's fascinating, and if you've got a mind to building jigsaws, this is what it is. This is what it is. And
I think we all see ourselves as, you have been a detective, but I think we all see ourselves as a little bit of a detective, don't we?
Yeah, but we are. And do you know what? It's really good, because you look at your neighbourhood watch people that get called curtain twitchers. Well, I'm glad they're there, because actually we need people in society to have an interest in what's happening in their area. So from a crime perspective, these people are the best thing that Essex Police have, or the police service have.
And actually, I think we spoke about this a while ago on the show. There's a worry that we're becoming more disengaged because we've got our phones. I mean, you see it now, don't you? People are on the train. I'm guilty of it as well. I'm not saying I don't do it, but you'll see people sometimes walking along the street, looking at the phones, people on public transport. So they're sort of losing that look of what's going on around. And as you said, being in tune with what's going on around and the people around you, what they're doing, what you're seeing, can actually help in a lot of other ways when it comes to crime prevention and things.
Absolutely, because we should be more observational.
Yeah.
We're very quick to get our phones out when there's an incident. We'll video something. But the fact is, we're not taking in our surroundings, what's above us. We're looking down all the time. So from a police perspective, it's really difficult to get witnesses who've actually seen something, because they're distracted by a third-party medium, as in their phones.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And in terms of the police, I suppose we've seen quite a few documentaries about Essex cases. You mentioned Essex Boys and Jeremy Bamber. There's been so many dramas and documentaries about those over the years, but more recently about some other cases as well. Some of those Essex police are sort of on board with and involved in, but I guess other documentaries they'll have less involvement in. You know, that's absolutely fine. Does that, as someone who's worked in the police, does that sometimes create a bit of a headache when you've got, you know, the likes of us in the media going, we want to do a documentary about this? Is that helpful or unhelpful?
I think that the way that the police are being berated in the national media at the moment, for them to highlight the great work that they're carrying out, that can only be positive. It is frustrating because I do both sides now. So I work with the media. I've done the police bit. It's frustrating when they don't highlight the brilliant work that they've carried out, because there's some great production companies. Yeah, all right, there's some more scurrilous ones out there, and we've seen those, but there's some great production companies who've got an organic view of how they produce true crime documentaries. And the police have got a massive opportunity to harness that, because the actual police and the media are very, very close. They're after the same piece of information. They're just doing it from a different perspective. And I think sometimes you get narrow-mindedness within the police organisations who don't actually understand the benefits of working with the media. I used to come in here every Tuesday and I would do the police, you know, there's been a burglary in such and such, and lock your windows because or make sure your front doors. Now, the benefits of that are overwhelming. Because the people listening to this today are the same ones who walk out to their front door and think, oh, do you know what? I didn't lock that properly. I need to do that. Yeah. So that engagement I find really frustrating. Some forces are better than others. Some chief officers are more forward-thinking than others. But it's harnessing those two skills and bringing them together.
Because what you don't want is there to be a backlash. I suppose I can understand why, or actually obstructive to any, and I don't think anyone would set out, as you say, professionals wouldn't set out to obstruct any investigations, but I suppose there's a fear that there might be some jeopardy or some backlash if you get involved in projects like that. Yeah,
I mean, there's always that potential, but the fact is that the production companies are very sympathetic. The way that they work with the police, you know, the cameras are no longer great big things they put on the shoulders. They're working off of, you know, small cameras, GoPros, whatever it may be. It's less intrusive. The problem you have is if the police make a mistake, they're always conscious of the fact they made a mistake, and it could well have been recorded. You know, if a policy decision was made and it was the wrong decision and somebody's captured that, it's always subject to scrutiny. And then the scrutiny is no greater than when it goes on to the television.
Yeah. And in terms of the victims, you know, when we have documentaries like this and any series to do with true crime, of course, at the heart of it is victims and grieving relatives. And sometimes that can be tricky for them to see. Again, sometimes they're involved in those stories being told, but other times perhaps less so. And again, that's tricky if you're making programmes, isn't it? Because at the heart of it, a family have lost their loved ones.
And this is a classic case of that, because obviously there's a lot of backlash around what's gone on in this particular case. But you're right. And let's not forget that every suspect has a family too.
Yeah.
So when the police arrest somebody for a murder, that family then have to pick up the pieces as well.
We saw that with adolescents. I'm hoping you saw that.
Yeah.
We saw that very much from the perspective of the suspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is absolutely heartbreaking, because they may have lost the breadwinner. If it's a domestic type incident, they've lost both parents, because one parent will go to prison, the other one's dead. So it has a real knock-on effect to a family. So I absolutely get that. But as I say, if it's not out there, then it will be out there, and it may not be accurately reported.
Well, Paul, it's fascinating having you on the show. Paul Mulleary, thank you very much for coming in. That documentary, excuse me, that documentary, by the way, 10 o'clock tonight on Channel 5.